My dad came down. He's over there. I told him to, then I told him not to, and then he ended up showing up. Because I didn't want him to be late for his church service and brunch afterwards, right?
Pardon?
Brunch. I have to yell loud. He used to run a chainsaw.
Yeah, well. Brunch, yeah. I'll make it. Have breakfast and then I'll go for brunch later.
Anywhere there's food, he'll show up. So he wasn't here to hear me speak. It was to have breakfast, right?
Whatever.
Sounds like a minister.
One of the unique opportunities I had about a week ago or so was to speak at graduation. I was a keynote speaker at CL's graduation. And the three things that I talked about there were always take the opportunity to thank those who help you along the way. Even the people that are really, really tough on us, usually those are the people that want us to succeed the most. Whether it was a teacher or a parent, whatever. So that was the first point. The second point was, never let anybody tell you you can't do something. I have a very good friend of mine who, when we were in high school in 1989, broke the school record in the pole vault, went to Slippery Rock to compete in track and field, came home a year later and told his parents that he was no longer going to pursue a college degree and that he was going to join the U.S. Navy because he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. Well, everybody told him he wasn't big enough, he wasn't strong enough, he wasn't fast enough, he didn't have the endurance. Well, after 6 months of BUDS training, he came home and was a Navy SEAL. And I asked him, I said, how in the world did you do that? I said, because I don't know if any of you have ever seen any of the videos that they have. It's absolutely incredibly hard, physically, mentally. They do it with very little sleep, if at all any. And he said, every time I thought about ringing a bell, because that's what you do. You put your hat, ring the bell, put your hat down, you're out. He said, every time I thought about ringing a bell, he said, I thought about everybody that told me I couldn't do it. And that was his motivation. So, to the class of 2023, I told them, I said, don't let anybody tell you you can't do something. Put your heart to it, put your mind to it, and do it. And then the third was to go out into life as they write the next chapter of their story, of their lives, was to go out and impact people's lives in a positive way. And I think that really ties into today, to Father's Day. I tell my boys all the time. I apologize to them all the time. Now that they're young men, I apologize to them all the time for being so hard on them when they were little. Like, I take fishing down at the Gallagher, not the big pond, the little one up on the hill. And if they got just like a little rat's nest in their fishing line, I fly it off the handle. I mean, it's fishing. It's not a big deal, but I'm yelling and screaming and trying to get them to get it right. I built a little shed at my house. I put 2 little windows in it. Both the windows are broken. Not from them, from me, when I was trying to teach them to be a catcher. And they couldn't catch up the ball, and I got mad. I threw it really, really hard. And it went over their head and right through the window. But, Aiden said to me, he said, but Dad, those times you were harming us, that's what made us who we are. And so I think about that. I think about that a lot and the impact that we have, not only on our own kids, but as aunts and uncles, as grandfathers. You take the time. I told my dad I was going to tell 2 stories, and these are fabulous, fabulous stories. So the first one he's about as far away as Tommy's. And we're throwing back and forth. My brother does this every single time. He catches the ball, steps away, catches the ball. Well, you got to keep your body in front of the ball. That way, if you miss it, you can still feel it doesn't get by you. My brother catches the ball, catch it. He gets mad. If you step aside one more time. So I'm standing there watching this unfold. What does my brother do? Throws it back to him. I was like, as hard as he could throw it, and doesn't my brother stay right behind it? Until this, bam! It hit him right in the forehead, knocked him off of his feet. And he comes running up, and he's just beside himself. Oh, I'm so sorry. It cured him. He never stepped aside of the ball ever again. But another story, same backyard out in Fisher. We were always, we had dirt spots that were home base because we would be pitching and catching, and my dad was always there. But we were playing backyard football. And it didn't matter who the quarterback was sometimes. He was the quarterback, and it was me versus my brother. And I don't know if you know my brother, but he's a lot bigger than I am, like 6'2", 250, 260 pounds. Anyway, but one day, it was one of us, and I can't remember who it was, that we were the quarterback. And my dad is out, and he is, I can't even describe it. He's throwing his head, and he's doing all, he's right in front, and he's going up and down. And we started laughing. We're like, what? We couldn't do anything. And he's like, these are my best moves. I'm open throwing the ball. These are my best moves. Just randomly. And we couldn't, I don't know that we finished the play. I don't know that we finished the game. It was one of the funniest things that I remember. And we were sitting and eating, and I said, well, I'm going to tell two stories. And he knew the one about the best moves, because I said, well, it was about backyard football, and he started laughing. And then the other one, I think Aiden guessed it, was about Uncle John. Catch it. But I think the biggest thing that I take away from that is the time. It's a time that my dad spent with me and my brother and my sister. We didn't have a lot when we were growing up, but the biggest thing that he did was invested in us his time and his love. And I think that all the stories, whether they're good or bad, that's what matters. So as we roll through, and I look at my two boys here, and Devin living on her own. She's 23 now, and Dylan is clear a half a world away. Dylan Gallagher, clear up in Fairbanks. It seems like it's blink of an eye that it happens. But the thing that I am most thankful for is the time that my dad spent with me and spent with my brother and my sister. And wants to, when the kids aren't busy, spend time with them. So, he can pass on to them things that he passed on to me, which was kindness, love, compassion, patience. Although I didn't get the patience part of that you've reffed my basketball games, Tom. I did not get the patience part of that. But I really think that is the biggest thing that I can take away from my experience growing up, how I did, where I did. And like I said, we didn't have lots of money, but it didn't matter. We didn't go on vacations till I was probably, 15 or 16, something like that. But that didn't matter. We didn't need to. But friends, family, and time, it was huge. And it was always time well spent. It didn't matter if we were doing firewood, it didn't matter, the only thing I can complain about is this. If we're pouring concrete one time, And my brother, he can't multitask, and we talk about this all the time. So we're pouring concrete, and my brother, he's mixing the concrete by hand, and I was mixing the concrete by hand. We were taking turns. And my brother, unlike me, loves to talk. Anyway, but he can't talk and work at the same time. And when you're mixing concrete, you cannot stop to talk. And we're busy doing something, and he like that looks up, and he's like a PennDOT worker, he's got the hoe sitting in the concrete, and he's talking to us. And my dad's like, "What, John? What? He literally, it slipped his mind that he's supposed to be mixing the concrete." But like I said, all of those memories, all the good, the bad, but all of those memories, it was all about time. And it was always, probably the biggest thing that I can take away is always talking about and teaching us to do the right thing. Okay? Do the right thing. And that was one of the biggest themes in the book that I wrote. It's easy when everybody can see you and you're out to do the right thing and want people to see you doing the right thing. One of the hardest things to do is to do the right thing when nobody's looking. And you don't get credit for it, right? But you still do the right thing. It's so funny. In the story, there's a part, and I would read a section of it when I would do book talks at school. And so to set it up, the main character really gets bullied badly by 3 kids. And throughout the story, it happens all the time. It's continuous every single day. And when he is becoming a man, he's kind of transformed into a Native American boy. And before he becomes a man, he has to spend a year away from the tribe. He has to learn how to do everything. Okay? Grow his own garden, make his own food, hunt, trap, make his own clothes, everything. Survive, gather supplies, all that, the nuts and the berries from the forest, everything. Well, he does that and does it well. And the 3 bullies somehow are there with him, and all they do is they wait until he's got everything stockpiled, and then they go beat him up and take him. Well, throughout from that point on, the main character is set on getting his things back, but more importantly, getting his respect back. He was going to go whether it went great or whether it went very, very bad. He was going to confront them. He was going to try to get his stuff back. But on the way, he realizes that they're being tracked by a grizzly bear. And so he has to make a decision at that point. Do I let things happen, let it unfold, let the bear attack them, or does he try to get ahead and warn them? Well, it's so funny that, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, boys and girls look at it completely different. Boys are, let karma, I'm done, they walk away. The girls are, well, you have to help them, you have to get ahead of them. And so at that point, it's so funny, and then we talked about it. It was, so the other thing about doing the right thing is, I always say to them, when we would have the books for sale, and I walk in and it's $10 for a book. And I would say, and I would take a $10 bill out and I would lay it on the floor on the threshold of the door. And I would say to them, if you walked in here today and saw that $10 bill, I said, think about today, what we're doing. And you saw a $10 bill on the floor, what would you do? Boys and girls, completely different. Boys are like, I just got $10. Girls are saying, well, I would turn it in to somebody, the teacher, or ask, whose it was. And then, explaining why would that $10 bill be on the floor today? And then the boys come around. ones. Yeah, they're thinking about the money. All right, they're thinking about the $10. Then they start to think it was for a purpose. It was somebody's book. I said, these are your classmates. These are your friends. Would you steal $10 or not? Give it back, and they're like, oh, okay. So they come around again. Doing the right thing when nobody's looking. However, I did say, if you're walking down the streets of Pittsburgh and you see a $10 bill, it's yours. Take it. Put it in your pocket. Unless you see it fall out of a young lady's purse or somebody, then you can give it back to them. They start laughing. But throughout the story, there are many different times where, number one, the main character has to make a very hard decision, and he always ends up making the right decision. There's a point where the main character does get attacked by the grizzly bear, and he has to, this time, it's called the seasons away, 4 seasons you had to be away, it's supposed to be spent by yourself. So when the main bully is attacked, he has to make a decision to bring him back and mend his wounds, and he does. Then, as he is on the mend, he develops kind of an infection, fever, and things like that. The only medicine that the main character is aware of is back in the village. But you can't return to the village for any reason. So he has to make a decision to break a rule to save the life of somebody that tormented him. But again, does the right thing. He returns. Later in the story, though, it flips when they do return to the village after being away for a year. It was found out that he did return to the village, the main character. And he is then ousted from the tribe. And it is the main bully then who has to do the right thing. And that is report to the chief and the elders in the village why he came back, why he did those things. And at the time, the main bully says he did everything that a person of this tribe, of tremendous character, should do. Even though it broke the rule, even though he did a thing or two that he wasn't supposed to. It saved the life of somebody that didn't treat others the way that he was treated himself. So in doing, you take the main bully who has spent most of his life tormenting, and then at the end, he is the one that turns around and does the right thing to let the main character return. And all the while, all the main character ever wanted was their friendship. And then that comes out near the end of the story. So the two things that I take away, especially on this Father's Day, is the time that my dad spent with me and my kids, and my nephews and nieces too. And how he and my mom and uncles, everybody, everybody. I don't want to quote Hillary Clinton, but it does take a village to raise a child, because it is. It's moms, it's dads, it's aunts, it's uncles, teachers, mentors, everybody. And they all taught me to do the right thing. I don't always do it, but I try. So that's it. That's everything I have. My visit when? 9:30. Okay. Just a little thought, and this may have shaped what you wrote. I was really touched by what you said about doing the right thing, because there's a story in the Bible where, and this is actually sort of a pivotal story in the Gospels, where Jesus is in a synagogue on the Sabbath, and you've got all the religious leaders around, and the Pharisees all around, and the Pharisees are guided by rules and laws. Incredibly moral people, really moral, guided by law, guided by rules. And they're all standing there, and Jesus is there, and he's teaching, and they're listening to him, and a guy comes in with a withered hand on the Sabbath. Now, withered hand, it is not life-threatening. He had a withered hand yesterday, and he'll have it tomorrow. And Jesus could heal him tomorrow and follow all those Sabbath rules that those Pharisees saw as so important. But he had a withered hand. And Jesus looks at him, and then he looks at all those incredibly moral people guided by rules. And he says, I've got one question. One question. Is it right to do good or evil on the Sabbath? You got all your rules on what you should be doing. One simple question. Is it right to do good or evil on the Sabbath? And they don't answer. And Jesus says to the man, stretch out your hand. And it was healed. And you think after that, so clearly Jesus answered the question by his actions. You would think after that these fine moral people would say, boy, I've been wrong. My whole life it's been wrong. It's been absurd. And it's at that point in the story that they decide they've got to kill him. They got to kill him. Doing the right thing, like you said, Jess, sometimes it's really hard and demands a sacrifice, but it's still the right thing. It's still the right thing. Well, Jess has got some books up here that are available, and I see some Sharpie pens.
Yeah, you can scratch and make them.
Yeah, ready to sign. So we'll get you a chair and yes.
Jess, you gave one of your books to Ed. I haven't read it completely, but I've read several chapters, and it's very engaging. It's really an easy read, and I love your language you use in your story. It's a lot of adjectives, really nice.
Well, come to think of thank you, first of all. Come to think of it, doing the process, I never realized how involved it is. The first thing the publisher said to me was, that book can be twice as long. I said, you know how long it took me to write this? And she said, it can be twice as long. Here is a perfect example, and I would read this part. I can't find it what page, but I used to have it, with little Post-its and everything. So when I go do the book talks, there was a point where the grizzly bear has the main bully kind of pinned down, and the two others that are with him leave. And I described it in the first part of it. I described it as, he ran as fast as his legs could carry him through the brush and was gone. She said you could make that 2 or 3 paragraphs long. So it ended up being, as fast as his legs could carry him, over logs, across the stream. Then when he jumps the stream, he rolls his ankle on a rock. He leans against a tree to catch his breath and close his eyes. He hears his friend scream. His eyes pop open. He takes off again. Through the thorns, through the jaggers. His legs are badly torn. And she was talking about being so descriptive that she said, picture it in your head and then write those words, what you would see that somebody is, afraid for their life. scared literally to death, and you're running through things that you normally wouldn't be, and what is happening. And it was amazing how much longer that the book became, but much more detailed it became. In the second one, I talk about this young man, his name's Samuel, walking across the stage to play the piano. And at first I said he walked with confidence, he sat down, back straight, didn't even open his sheet music, because he knew the music by heart. Well, she said, describe what he's wearing. So it was a dark blue suit with a white shirt with a tie to match, brown leather wingtip shoes. He strolled across the stage confidently, sat down with his back straight, elbows in, and didn't open his music. He didn't open his music because he was ready. He knew, so it lengthened, but made the story better. More detailed, and so it was just an amazing process to go through. Once you get somebody that's willing to publish it, that's the best part. But because you get rejection letter after rejection letter, that's not a lot of fun. But I try to describe it, and do you know what's funny? Here's the best part. My cousins. We grew up in Canada when we were little, and the main character's walk to school was our walk to school. We would walk down railroad tracks, and if we would find a bottle, a glass bottle, that you could turn it into to be recycled and get 5 or 10 cents. And we would get penny what? We would get penny candy, and there were 5 of us. If there were 10, everybody would get 1 piece, and then my oldest cousin Eric, he got the rest. He's the oldest, big guy. What was funny about that story is I couldn't remember the name of the store. So we'd walk down the railroad tracks, we'd cross the railroad tracks, the store was right there, it was on the corner. We would walk through this alleyway and come down to the elementary school. And it was probably, 4 blocks, 5 blocks, something like that?
I think you're exaggerating a little.
Really, 4 blocks at least.
Hawthorne?
Just we go over to the end.
Compromise 3.
3 blocks. Okay, so anyway, I couldn't remember the name of the store. My cousins, after they read the book, said, "What's the store that you were talking about? The walk in the store?" He said, they were like, "Was that Crumbs?" And that's exactly what it was. And I couldn't remember it until they said it. But they recognized their own walk to school. So there were so many little things that I took. Now, I will tell you, we had this conversation just a minute ago, my dad and I was never bullied. I've seen it. Didn't do anything to stop it, which I should have, but I was never bullied, especially by my big brother. Never. And my dad will tell you, he is probably, other than Aiden, my brother John is probably kindest, most patient person I know. And believe me, okay? He said to me one time, Jess, you weren't the easiest person to live with. We would argue. We'd be playing wiffle ball or kickball. It didn't matter. If I was safe at first, darn it, I was safe at first, and I would argue until he would leave. He'd be like, this isn't fun anymore. Then I'm begging. Come here, please. Your neighbor was 3 miles away. So, you only had a couple people. So, okay, we're going to get back in, and 10 minutes later, I'm arguing whether I'm out or safe again. So he had, but never. He was the best big brother I could ever ask for. And I mean that with all my heart. He was, and we were, I have a book. You ever have Frog and Toad, the books Frog and Toad together? That was me and my brother. Always together, always, no matter what. So, anyway, that's it. I'm not going to tell. Well, you got your chair? Thank you again.